Hard Times by Charles Dickens. Book the First, Sowing. Chapter 8, Never Wonder. Let us strike the keynote again before pursuing the tune. When she was half a dozen years younger, Louisa had been overheard to begin a conversation with her brother one day by saying, "Tom, I wonder," upon which Mr. Gradgrind, who was the person overhearing, stepped forth into the light and said, "Louisa, never wonder." Herein lay the spring of the mechanical art and mystery of educating the reason without stooping to the cultivation of the sentiments and affections. Never wonder. By means of the addition, subtraction, multiplication and division, settle everything somehow, and never wonder. Bring to me, says Umchokum child, yonder baby just able to walk, and I will engage that it shall never wonder. Now, besides very many babies just able to walk, there happened to be in Coketown a considerable population of babies who'd been walking against time towards the infinite world 20, 30, 40, 50 years and more. These portentous infants being alarming creatures to stalk about in any human society, the 18 denominations incessantly scratched one another's faces and pulled one another's hair by way of agreeing on the steps to be taken for their improvement, which they never did. A surprising circumstance when the happy adaptation of the means to the end is considered. Still, although they differed in every other particular, conceivable and inconceivable, especially inconceivable, they were pretty well united on the point that these unlucky infants were never to wonder. Body number 1 said they must take everything on trust. Body number 2 said they must take everything on political economy. Body number 3 wrote leaden little books for them, showing how the good grown-up baby invariably got to the savings bank and the bad grown-up baby invariably got transported. Body number 4, under dreary pretences of being droll, when it was very melancholy indeed, made the shallowest pretences of concealing pitfalls of knowledge into which it was the duty of these babies to be smuggled and inveigled. But all the bodies agreed that they were never to wonder. There was a library in Coketown to which general access was easy. Mr. Gradgrind greatly tormented his mind about what people read in the library, a point whereon little rivers of tabular statements periodically flowed into the howling ocean of tabular statements, which no diver ever got to any depth in and came up sane. It was a disheartening circumstance, but a melancholy fact, that even these readers persisted in wondering. They wondered about human nature, human passions, human hopes and fears, the struggles, triumphs and defeats, the cares and joys and sorrows, the lives and deaths of common men and women. They sometimes, after 15 hours' work, sat down to read mere fables about men and women, more or less like themselves, and about children more or less like their own. They took Defoe to their bosoms instead of Euclid, and seemed to be on the whole more comforted by Goldsmith than by Cocker. Mr. Gradgrind was for ever working, in print and out of print, at this eccentric sum, and he never could make out how it yielded this unaccountable product. "I'm sick of my life, Lou. I hate it altogether, and I hate everybody except you," said the unnatural young Thomas Gradgrind in the hair-cutting chamber at twilight. "You don't hate Cissy, Tom." "I hate to be obliged to call her dupe, and she hates me," said Tom moodily. "No, she does not, Tom, I'm sure." "She must," said Tom. "She must hate and detest the whole set of us. They'll bother her head off, I think, before they've done with her. Already she's getting as pale as wax and as heavy as I am." Young Thomas expressed these sentiments sitting astride of a chair before the fire, with his arms on the back and his sulky face on his arms. His sister sat in the darkest corner by the fireside, now looking at him, now looking at the bright sparks as they dropped upon the hearth. "As to me," said Tom, tumbling his hair all manner of ways with his sulky hands, "I'm a donkey, that's what I am. I'm as obstinate as one, I'm more stupid than one, I get as much pleasure as one, and I should like to kick like one." "Not me, I hope, Tom." "No, Lou, I wouldn't hurt you. I made an exception of you at first. I don't know what this jolly old jaundiced jail—" Tom had paused to find a sufficiently complimentary and expressive name for the parental roof, and seemed to relieve his mind for a moment by the strong alliteration of this one, "would be without you." "Indeed, Tom, do you really and truly say so?" Why, of course I do. What's the use of talking about it, returned Tom, chafing his face on his coat sleeve as if to mortify his flesh and have it in unison with his spirits. Because, Tom, said his sister, after silently watching the sparks a while, as I get older and nearer growing up, I often sit wondering here and think how unfortunate it is for me that I can't reconcile you to home better than I'm able to do. I don't know what other girls know. I can't play to you or sing to you. I can't talk to you so as to lighten your mind, for I never see any amusing sights or read any amusing books that it would be a pleasure or relief to you to talk about when you're tired. Well, no more do I. I'm as bad as you in that respect, and I'm a mule too, which you're not. If father was determined to make me either a prig or a mule, and I'm not so much a prig, why, it stands to reason I must be a mule. And so I am, said Tom desperately. It's a great pity, said Louisa after another pause and speaking thoughtfully out of her dark corner. It's a great pity, Tom. It's very unfortunate for both of us. Oh, you, said Tom. You're a girl, Lou, and a girl comes out of it better than a boy does. I don't miss anything in you. You're the only pleasure I have. You can brighten even this place, and you can always lead me as you like. You're a dear brother, Tom, and while you think I can do such things, I don't so much mind knowing better. Though I do know better, Tom, and I'm very sorry for it. She came and kissed him and went back to her corner again. I wish I could collect all the facts we hear so much about, said Tom, spitefully setting his teeth, and all the figures and all the people who found them out, and I wish I could put 1,000 barrels of gunpowder under them and blow them up all together. However, when I go to live with old Bounderby, I'll have my revenge. Your revenge, Tom? I mean, I'll enjoy myself a little and go about and see something and hear something. I'll recompense myself for the way in which I've been brought up. But don't disappoint yourself beforehand, Tom. Mr. Bounderby thinks as father thinks, and is a great deal rougher, but not half so kind. Oh, said Tom, laughing, I don't mind that. I shall be very well know how to manage and smooth old Bounderby. Their shadows were defined upon the wall, but those of the high presses of the room were all blended together on the wall and on the ceiling, as if the brother and sister were overhung by a dark cavern. Or a fanciful imagination, if such treason could have been there, might have made it out to be the shadow of their subject and of its lowering association with their future. What is your great mode of smoothing and managing, Tom? Is it a secret? Oh, said Tom, if it's a secret, it's not far off. It's you. You're his little pet. You're his favourite. He'll do anything for you. When he says to me what I don't like, I shall say to him, my sister Lou will be hurt and disappointed, Mr. Bounderby. She always used to tell me she was sure you would be easier with me than this. That'll bring him about, or nothing will. After waiting for some answering remark and getting none, Tom wearily relapsed into the present time and twined himself yawning round and round about the rails of his chair, and rumpled his head more and more until he suddenly looked up and asked, Have you gone to sleep, Lou? No, Tom, I'm looking at the fire. You seem to find more to look in it than ever I could find, said Tom. Another of the advantages, I suppose, of being a girl. Tom, inquired his sister slowly and in a curious tone, as if she were reading what she asked in the fire, and if it were not quite plainly written there, do you look forward with any satisfaction to this change to Mr. Bounderby's? Why, there's one thing to be said of it, returned Tom, pushing his chair from him and standing up. It'll be getting away from home. There is one thing to be said of it, Louisa repeated in her former curious tone. It'll be getting away from home, yes. Not but that I shall be very unwilling both to leave you, Lou, and to leave here. But I must go, you know, whether I like it or not, and I'd better go where I can take with me some advantage of your influence than where I should lose it altogether. Don't you see? Yes, Tom. The answer was so long in coming, though, that there was no indecision in it, that Tom went and leaned on the back of her chair to contemplate the fire which engrossed her, from her point of view, and see what he could make of it. Except that it's a fire, said Tom. It looks to me as stupid and blank as everything else looks. What do you see in it? Not a circus. I don't see anything in it, Tom, particularly, but since I've been looking at it, I've been wondering about you and me grown up. Wondering again, said Tom. I have such unmanageable thoughts, returned his sister, that they will wonder. "Then I beg of you, Louisa," said Mrs. Gradgrind, who had opened the door without being heard, "to do nothing of that description for goodness' sake, you inconsiderate girl, or I shall never hear the last of it from your father. And Thomas, it's really shameful, with my poor head continually wearing me out, that a boy brought up as you had been, and whose education has cost what yours has, should be found encouraging his sister to wonder, when he knows his father has expressly said she is not to do it." Louisa denied Tom's participation in the offence, but her mother stopped her with the conclusive answer: "Louisa, don't tell me in my state of health, for unless you have been encouraged, it is morally and physically impossible that you could have done it." "I was encouraged by nothing, mother, but by looking at the red sparks dropping out the fire and whitening and dying. It made me think, after all, how short my life would be, and how little I could hope to do with it." "Nonsense," said Mrs. Gradgrind, rendered almost energetic. "Nonsense. I don't stand there and tell such stuff to my face, when you know very well that if it was ever to reach your father's ears, I should never hear the last of it. After all the trouble that's been taken with you, after the lectures you've attended and the experiments you've seen, after I've heard you myself, when the whole of my right side had been benumbed, going on with your master about combustion and calcination and calorification, and I may say every kind of ation that you could drive a poor invalid distracted to hear you talking in this absurd way about sparks and ashes." "I wish," whimpered Mrs. Gradgrind, taking a chair and discharging her strongest point before succumbing under these shadows of facts, "yes, I really do wish that I'd never had a family, and then you would have known what it was to do without me.